So today we're going to talk about the criminalization of miscarriages. So first, we're going to start off with an example. This is Brittany Pula. She's a Oklahoma resident. At the age of 19, she miscarried at 17 weeks pregnant. And 2 weeks after her miscarriage, she was arrested. She was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. The medical examiner and OBGYN expert witness were unable to determine the exact cause of the miscarriage, which is really common in many miscarriages. The cause is incredibly difficult to determine. But Brittany's story is not unheard of. Since 2005, there's been over 1,200 cases where women have been convicted of manslaughter or murder because of miscarriage or stillbirth. So here's some statistics just to give you this, kind of the scope of things we're talking about. 10 to 15% of pregnancies end in a miscarriage in the United States. At any given year, there's between 6 to 7 million pregnancies, which can be anywhere from 600,000 to almost 1 million miscarriages in the United States. 50% of miscarriages result because of problems with extra or missing chromosomes when the embryo divides and grows. This has no cause because of anything that the pregnant person has done. This doesn't have any cause of inherited genetics. It just sometimes happens, and there's no way you can predict it happening. There's no way you can prevent it happening. Other causes can include diseases, uterine and cervical issues, and obviously smoking and alcohol use and illicit drug use. However, that is only 1%, less than 1% of all miscarriages in the United States. There's no way to prevent miscarriages, which is why criminalizing them is so problematic. So issues that it can cause. The criminalization of miscarriages can cause women to not seek medical attention if they believe they're experiencing one, if they are scared of legal repercussions. Lack of medical attention can lead to infection and excessive bleeding, which could lead to death. And if you think you're having a miscarriage and you're actually not, there could be something wrong with the baby. There are so many problems that could happen by not seeking out medical attention. In states that have strict abortion bans, this is the continuation of the government taking away bodily autonomy of women. We have seen over the past few years, just more and more of the government, state governments trying to take away the rights of women. And the criminalization of miscarriages spreads the notion that they are always the pregnant person's fault. Whereas in most cases of miscarriages, there is no way for a pregnant person to stop it from happening. Women who experience miscarriages are already oftentimes terrified that they are the one that caused it, or something they did caused this miscarriage. And that is 99% of the time not the case. The federal government their inaction to resolving this problem has caused hundreds of women to be incarcerated by something they can't control. Just them not even talking about, this legislation that's affecting women is really contributing to the demonization of miscarriages. And, it makes women feel like there's something wrong with them if they experience one, and especially if they can go to prison because of it. That's not helping any of the conversation around miscarriages. With the rise in near total abortion bans across many states of the US, the government is continuing to fail women by allowing these policies to stay active. So ways that I think that the government can help resolve some of these issues would be for Congress to mandate better sex education in schools. This would solve many problems, in my opinion, but especially it would reduce misinformation about miscarriages and stillbirths, which would help prevent this kind of legislation from even happening if people actually knew what was happening in the body when a miscarriage was happening. States that allow people who have suffered miscarriages to be prosecuted should be required by the US Supreme Court to repeal the legislation allowing this kind of legal action. The U.S. Supreme Court needs to take a stand and find this legislation unconstitutional. In the meantime, because legislation could take years, the president should be pardoning people who have been incarcerated to this misogynistic legislation. It's not fair for women to sit in jail for something they couldn't have controlled. And I believe our government is failing those women. So to bring some awareness about this issue, when I talked to my friends and family about it, people who aren't necessarily political science majors or aren't interested in politics, most people in the American public have no idea that this is even happening. And miscarriages affect everyone. It doesn't matter, your social or economic class or political party. It doesn't matter if you're pro-choice or pro-life. It can affect all of us. And it may not be you that has a miscarriage, but it could be one of your friends, one of your family members, and it doesn't matter what they believe. If they suffer a miscarriages, there is a possibility that they could be sent to prison. 38 states have legislation allowing for incarceration of people who have suffered miscarriages, including Alabama, Illinois, and others. Now, some of those states have legislation that only pertains if you are intentionally harming the unborn fetus. Illinois is one of those states where you have to prove intent to kill the unborn fetus. But states like Alabama and Georgia have a much broader spectrum of what constitutes manslaughter or murder. To bring awareness to this issue, we, the public, need to contact our state representatives and senators to call for change. Just because we may live in Illinois where this legislation isn't really affecting us, it's affecting our sisters in many states around the country. And we need to stand up for them because their government is not representing them accurately. So contact your state representatives, your senators, ask them if they can propose a bill that would get rid of this misogynistic legislation. Other ways to support organizations that are actively fighting to end feticide legislation: you can donate or volunteer at places like Planned Parenthood and the National Advocates for Pregnant Women. Both of these organizations are doing really extensive work to try to appeal a lot of these cases where women have been incarcerated, and they both do just very important work for women. So these are my sources, and thank you for listening.